Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to InfoGamer. Today we have a very special lesson, and that is to update our input system for our first-person controller. When I started this series, the new input system for Unity was only in beta, but now that they have a final version for Unity 2019, they also have a final version for their new input system. And there's quite a few changes that they've made, and so I'm going to show you how to update our project so that it works with the new input system. So let's get to it. All right, so here I have the Unity Hub opened, and the first thing that we want to do is open our first-person controller project with the latest version of Unity. Now I have two copies of my project, and I've already opened one with Unity 2019, and that's because I wanted to make sure that I can figure this out before I show you how to do it. And so I have this older version of my project that still says Unity 2018. And so I'm going to select this, and I'm going to select the latest version of Unity. I'm then going to click on this project and open it up inside Unity. Here it's just telling me that this project was created with an older version of Unity, and it wants to make sure that I'm okay with opening it with a newer version of Unity. And so I'm going to click confirm. All right, so once your project's open inside of Unity, if I click play, and you'll notice that your project is still working, and that's because we need to update to the latest version of the input system. So to do this, we're going to go up to Windows, then Package Manager. We then want to scroll down to where it says Input System, and we'll select that. And then over on the right hand side, you'll see a button that says Update, and then the version number. And so we're going to select this. Once the input system is up to date, one thing that you might find helpful is the documentation. And so right here up at the top, you can see where it says View Documentation. And if we click on that, it'll open up this web page here, which talks about how to use the new input system. But back in Unity, we can go ahead and close this window, and you'll notice that once we have the new input system up to date, we now have a whole bunch of errors in our console window. But that's okay, because I'm now going to show you how to fix these errors. And the first thing that we want to do to fix these errors is re-import all of our assets. And so I'm going to go to the Assets drop-down menu, and I'm going to select Re-import All. I'm then going to select Re-import. Now this process will take a few seconds, and so while you wait, make sure that you pause this video. But once it's finished re-importing all of your assets, you'll notice that your input action files have changed. But as you can see, we still have a bunch of errors in our console window. And so let's start by fixing our basic first-person controller. And the first thing that we want to do to fix this is select our basic input controller script. This is the script that was automatically generated by our input action file. And we want to regenerate this script, and so I'm going to delete our basic input controller script. But make sure that you keep your basic FP controller script. I'm then going to select our input action file, and I'm going to click Edit Asset. Here you can see that we still have our action maps and all of our key bindings, and so there shouldn't be anything that we need to change here. And so now over in the inspector, I'm going to select Generate C# class, and then I'm going to make sure that the script is going to be created in the correct location. I'm then going to click Apply, and here you can see that we now have a new basic input controller script. We can then go ahead and close this window, and I'm going to open up our basic FP controller script. So once you have your script open, the first thing that you'll notice is that we're receiving an error up in our namespaces, and it's right here where it says using unityengine.experimental.input. And the reason why we're receiving this error is because the input system namespace is no longer in beta, and so it's not part of the experimental namespace. And so let's go ahead and comment this out. But we do need to add in its replacement, and so on a new line, I'm going to type using unityengine.inputSystem. And adding this namespace will actually get rid of an error that we were receiving down here where it says input action. Now the next error that we're receiving is right here where we're declaring our basic input controller variable. And this used to be for the input action file or script. And so to fix this error, we need to add an interface to our inheritance. And so for the interface, I'm going to type a comma, and then for me, it is basic input controls dot ibasicfpcontrol_actions. But now we're receiving an error for this interface, and that's because there's certain callback functions that we're not implementing in this script. And so to fix this, I'm going to select the interface and then going to hold Alt and press Enter. And then here you can see that there's an option that says Implement Interface. And then over in the preview window, you can see that there's 3 new callback functions that it's going to add. Now to fix this next error, all I have to do is change the class name to basic input controls. For some reason, when I regenerated our input action script, it changed the name of the class to this. But when I did this last night in the other project, it didn't change the name of the class. And so that's just a weird behavior. I don't know why that happened. So from this point, you'll notice that we fixed all the compiler errors in this script, but there's still a few things that we need to do. The first thing that we need to do is create an awake function. So I'm going to type void and then awake. Inside this function, we want to initialize our basic input controls variable, because for some reason now with the new update, this variable won't be displayed inside the inspector, even if it's public or serialized. So to initialize it, all we have to do is type basic input controls to get our variable, and then we're going to set it equal to new and then basic input controls with a capital B, and then parentheses semicolon. The next thing that we need to do is register the script to all the callback functions of our action map. To do this, I'm going to type basic input controls to get our variable, then dot basic fp controls to get our action map, then dot set callbacks, and I'm going to pass in this. And then the next thing that we need to do is enable these callbacks, and there's a lot easier way to do it now. And so I'm going to comment out everything that we have in our onEnable function. And then at the top of our onEnable function, I'm going to type basic input controls dot basic fp controls, then dot enable, and then parentheses semicolon. And so this is actually really cool because instead of having to do this for every single action event and callback function, we can now just do it for the action maps. And so now we need to disable the callback functions, and so I'm going to select this. And then I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it into our onDisable function. And then I'm going to change the enable to disable. I'm then going to comment out everything else in our onDisable function. Now you might be wondering, how are these functions going to be called now that we've commented out all of these lines? And that's where all of these new callback functions come into play. And so you'll notice that there's a callback function for every single action in our action map. And so all we have to do is copy the content of our other functions and paste it into these callback functions respectively. And so I'm going to copy what's inside our movement input function, and I'm going to paste it into our onMove callback function, and then going to copy our rotation axis Y and paste it into our onMouse X function. And then going to copy our camera rotate axis X, and I'm going to paste it into our onMouse Y function. Then if we want to, we can just comment out all of our other functions that we had previously created. And with that, we can then save this script, and then we can go back to Unity. You can see that we now have less errors in our console window, and so let's go on to fix our classic first-person controller. So I'm going to go to the scripts folder. I'm then going to find our classic input controller script, which is the script that was generated by our input action file, and I'm going to delete this script. I'm then going to select our input action file, and I'm going to click generate C# class, and then going to set the destination, and then I'm going to click apply. You can now see that we have a new classic input controller script, and this is kind of weird because it didn't rename the class for this script. So now let's open up our classic FP controller script, and in here we need to do the same steps. And so I'm going to comment out this namespace. I'm then going to add in the using Unity engine dot input system. We then need to add in the interfaces, and there's going to be actually more than one. So the first one is going to be classic input controller dot I basic FP controls actions. And the second one is going to be classic input controller dot I classic FP controls actions. We then need to fix these errors by clicking on the interfaces and then holding Alt and pressing Enter, and then clicking Implement Interface. And I'm going to do that for this one as well. We then need to scroll down and create the awake function. We then need to initialize our classic input controls variable. So I'm going to type classic input controls equals new and then classic input controller, parentheses, semicolon. We then need to register this script, and so I'm going to type classic input controls and then .basic fp controls .set callbacks, and we're going to pass in this. We then need to do this again, but for the classic fp controls. So I'm going to type classic input controls .classic fp controls .set callbacks, and then pass in this. We then need to enable both of these callbacks, and so in our onEnable function, I'm going to type classic input controls .basic fp controls .enable, and then going to type classic input controls .classic fp controls .enable. I'm then going to comment out the rest of this onEnable function, and I'm going to copy both of these lines of code, and then I'm going to paste them into our onDisable function and change the enable to disable. I'm then going to comment out the rest of the onDisable function. Now all we need to do is go through each of these functions and copy the content of these functions and paste them into the respective callback function. So I'm first going to go to our movement input function, which is right here. I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to scroll down to our onMove function and replace what's inside it. I'm then going to go to the rotation axis Y function. I'm going to copy what's inside here. I'm going to paste it into our onMouse X function. I'm then going to go to our camera rotation axis Y function. I'm going to copy this function, and I'm going to paste it into our onMouse Y function. And then going to go up to our jump input function, and I'm going to paste it into our onJump function. I'm then going to go to our crouch input function. I'm going to copy this function, and I'm going to paste it into our onCrouch function. Then if we want to, we can comment out our old functions. And then we can save the script and go back to Unity. Now we're just receiving 2 more errors, and that's because we need to fix our classic shoot function. And so I'm going to open that up. And then we need to go through the same steps for this script. And so I'm going to replace this namespace with the using Unity engine.input system. We then need to add in the interface, which is going to be classic input controller.classic shooting action. I'm then going to select this interface and then hold Alt and press Enter, and then select Implement Interface. We then need to scroll down and create the awake function. Inside this function, we need to initialize our classic input controls variable. And so I'm going to type classic input controls equals new classic input controller, parentheses, semicolon. We then need to register this script to the action map. So I'm going to type classic input controls dot classic shooting dot set callbacks, and then I'm going to pass in this. We then need to enable the callbacks, and so in the onEnable function, I'm going to type classic input controls dot classic shooting dot enable. I'm then going to comment out the rest of this function, and I'm going to copy this line. I'm then going to paste it in the onDisable function and change the enable to disable, and then I'm going to comment out the rest of this function. Now all we need to do is copy the content of our shoot input function, and we're going to paste it into our onShootDown function and our onShootUp function. We can then comment out our shoot input function, and then we can save this script. Now once we've done all of that, let's go back to Unity. And it looks like I'm receiving 1 more error. Let's go check to see where it's at. It looks like I accidentally commented out our check crouch block function. Yep, so I'm going to move this up to right here. There we go. Save it. Go back to Unity. And there we go. We're no longer receiving any errors. So let's go ahead and click play, and we'll see if our game is working properly. So it looks like it's working pretty good, except for it's leaving behind 2 bullet holes, which means that we're probably doing our shoot function twice. Now to fix this problem, let's real quick go back to our classic shooter script. Inside the script, since we have 2 separate functions now for the shoot mechanic, we can get rid of a lot of the stuff that we're doing inside our onShootUp function. Inside this function, the only thing that we really need to be doing is reading in the input value from the player. And so we can get rid of everything else inside this function. So let's go ahead and save the script now, and we'll go back to Unity and test our project one more time. And here you can see that we're now only leaving one bullet hole. And so everything seems to be working properly now. I can walk around, I can look around, and I can shoot. Alright, so that's everything that we need to do for this video. We were able to take our old input system and update it to the new version, and we were able to fix all the bugs. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you found it to be informational. If you have any questions, then leave them in the comments below. And finally, make sure that you subscribe to our channel so you can be up to date on all our latest videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.